understand.
You do? Okay. That you understand. And of course we want to thank our own, all of your family. Kishori is like, I think a sister from another lifetime or something. Because immediately we met each other, we just like connected with each other. And again, she's one of those persons like Vatsala Prabhu. Somewhat different ashram, different way of how to do things. However, her heart is also so much dedicated to helping other hearts to connect with who we are and what is the new purpose of our lives. I'm sure many of you have experienced that. Fisher is someone that she makes many sacrifices to help many people, not just the ones from Russia. Many people, I'm one of them. And of course her wonderful husband, Kishishwar Prabhu. Oh, we know. It's a team, right? So when in the Grihastha ashram, sometimes one person may have a certain skill or a certain tool that they like to offer, and maybe the other person may have a different tool, a different skill that they might want to offer.
What's that saying? Behind every good woman is a strong man.
Vice versa.
That's the teamship, right? That's his cue. Don't be so serious. Okay, so that's the teamship. The teamship is fantastic. They combine it with each other. They make things very beautiful for many people in the world. And so we're blessed. And of course, it's the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and our own dear Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and so many of his very good close friends, like Srila Ratnat Maharaj, who Ekavira Prabhu and I, we were very blessed to have his association here in this very house, and we'll show you the very room that he was coming to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj every single day when Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was leaving his body. So that's quite, this is a very historical house. Many amazing pastimes have happened in this house. And so we're grateful to Kishore. We thank you. We thank you for bringing all your retreaters up to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's house before you even start your retreat. That's pretty far out. I mean, you're starting your retreat with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And so I found these recently. So I wanted to show you something that my Guru Maharaj connection with the devotees from Russia. The kindness and the loving reciprocation that he always received from the people in Russia and Ukraine. So he loved to go. And I tell this story many times. Before he left his body, when he decided that he would have his leg amputated so that he could possibly stay on the planet a little longer, there was one primary goal that he had in his life. And that goal was to be able to go back to Russia. That was the only reason that he had his leg amputated. Because he thought that he could learn to walk with a prosthesis, and if he could walk with the prosthesis, then that would allow him to get back on the plane and go back to Russia and to Ukraine. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And so I see that he's still going to Russia. I see that. In the years that he's left almost 14 years now. Wherever I go in the world, doesn't matter where, the Russian devotees, they have this wide open heart for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And when I see that heart, it makes me want to jump in. So please allow Ekavira and I today to jump into your hearts a little bit. Thank you very much. So Ekavira, what are we going to talk about? I will. I will. Kishore is asking if we would speak something because she's trying to do something.
Okay.
So she would like us to share, and then I will introduce Yashoda and let Yashoda share. So would you share some things? What I understand from Kishore is that you would like to hear some things about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and also how do we try to know? How are we endeavoring to stay enthusiastic after the departure of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj? How's that? How's that possible? What are we doing? So we want to share some of that with you. Because when the spiritual master leaves, or when anyone leaves that's very close to us, somehow we need to be able to function in the world still. And that's an experience, that's a learning experience, a deep learning experience. So we'd like to share some of that. I'm so happy to see you. It's amazing. My poor. Okay, give your food.
Do you mind if we have a seat?
You sure you could put the mic on him? Or I don't know.
I'll put on you. Can you sit together, please, so we have you both on camera? Till you're okay.
Okay. So
You can help. We don't want to leave though. Stay here.
we said that we would only keep you here for a couple of hours at the max. So we'll talk to you. I'll talk to you for, let's say, about 10 minutes. And then we'll move around. Kishore and I, we do these webinars. And she's been trying to get me to speak for her webinar, the webinars that she does. And unfortunately, this is what we're doing now. So, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So it's Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's mercy that somehow Kishore and myself are able to do these webinars. Because this was what Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj did. He didn't do webinars because at that time when he was on the planet, I don't think very many people were doing that way of communication. I think that's something that's been developed. Well, I'm sure it was being done, however, it wasn't being done so much. And specifically, it was not being done in ISKCON. So, let's talk a little bit about that mood of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and why he had that mood to be able to do seminars and workshops and things like that in order to connect with devotees. So we'll share a little bit about that. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunirvadi Paschatya Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tiyatha Swami Tinamane Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shitatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tiyatha Tinamane Jai Shri Guru Maharaj. So one thing about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is he was very dynamic. And he always wanted to connect with people, and he knew, he had this understanding, and he would share this with us all the time, that we need to go to the people. We shouldn't expect people to come to us. That, yes, sometimes people will come to us, however, we need to be able to reach out and make ourselves available. And so, this was his mood. He wanted, every place that he went, no matter where it was, he would always request the devotees, the people that were there, that brought him to those places, to let him do outreach programs. That was the way that he connected with people. And he specifically loved to connect with people that were not already devotees. He really appreciated the people that were searching and looking and not understanding what life was all about.
He wanted so much to connect with those persons because he got joy from getting a little light from those persons, letting those persons just get some light in terms of understanding a little bit about themselves. So Bhakti Tиртха Maharaj, he did that all over the world. If you listen to some of his tapes, you will hear him in every country in the world talking about very deep things that most people don't talk about. Recently, there was one person that he was writing to me, and he was saying that when he started reading Bhakti Tиртха Maharaj's books, because of course that's another way that he did outreach. So when he said he thought nobody could understand him. He had actually come to the ISKCON temple, and he had met the devotees, and he really was attracted to being in the temple. However, he felt that he wasn't so understood because he was coming from a conditioned background, and he had emotional things that he needed to address. And so he felt in the environment of the temple that he had participated in that no one could understand his emotional concerns. And so Bhakti Tиртха Maharaj, because he had a psychological background from school, he could definitely understand the emotional concerns of people all over the world, because that was what he studied that in school, and also because he naturally was enthusiastic to offer that knowledge that he had received in school for Srila Prabhupada's mission. So this young man that wrote this letter, that wrote this little WhatsApp message, he was explaining that, and he was explaining how Bhakti Tиртха Maharaj's books had helped him so much. And so that's the experience, that's what I remember so much about the relationship that I've had with Bhakti Tиртха Maharaj over the years. I met him in 1979. Actually, I met him in Washington, D.C. And the first place where I met him was in a restaurant where he was doing outreach programs. He had a Govinda's restaurant with a couple of devotees, and the restaurant was opened. It was in the heart of Washington, D.C., and the restaurant not many people knew that it was a Hare Krishna restaurant because he didn't really advertise it in that way. However, most of the people that came were vegetarians. But one thing that he did that caught my attention, and this is in 1979 when I met him, every Sunday he would become so enthusiastic, more than the different days in the week, because on Sundays the restaurant was closed, and we would open the restaurant to people that could not pay. They had no way of coming into because the restaurant, of course, it's a restaurant, you pay for the meals. People that they knew that was something very special, but they had no idea of what was going on there in that restaurant. And so he would open this up for people in the neighborhood, in the community. And all kinds of people would come for this free vegetarian meal. And I remember it was from then that I realized that he had a different approach of how he presented Krishna consciousness to people that may not in their life take Krishna consciousness. So that was in 1979. And so as time went on, I saw how he used this tool and used this skill in such a way that he would bring Srila Prabhupada very much alive, Srila Prabhupada's books very much alive to so many people, but yet he would connect with them through their minds and through their intelligence. And I watched that over the years, and I always thought, this is just so incredible how my Guru Maharaj is able to connect with the hearts of people through their minds, that was just so incredible. He would first get to the minds, into the minds of people. And then from there, he would know that, okay, this is what we do. We serve these people, and we talk to them, and we try to encourage them just in having friendship. That was so key for him, so key to develop friendship with people. And so most of my journey in my Krishna consciousness, because that's all my life, that's who trained me, was Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. I was taught to develop friendship with people. And so it's just a natural thing, because that's just who he was, and that's just how he taught me. And so wherever I go, I try to connect with people through being friends, through trying to learn. How are you? Who are you? What's going on? What do you like? Yeah, what can we do together? What can I do for you? What can you do for me? How can we support each other? And that's how I met Kishori, because Kishori was, she was that person that I could tell that I could be her friend, and she could be my friend. And so we developed this amazing friendship. And from that, we started developing more Krishna consciousness, and we started developing more service together. So that was Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's mood. And he did that through his books, and he did that primarily by doing these different types of workshops and seminars in ways that most people did not know, were not so much aware of this type of way to connect. And so so this is kind of what is inspiring me today to be able to do the webinars that Kishore and myself are doing, because I saw how important it was for him. I saw that. And that's how I met Prabhu. I was teaching mediation, conflict resolution, and he was in the class in Mayapur. I mean, it was just incredible. And that's what Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj did. That's how he connected with people. And so here you are 2 years later, sitting in the Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's house. So this is the mercy of the Guru, and this is what I believe can keep one enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness. I can't say that I have love for Krishna. I can say I'm learning how to want to love Krishna. However, I can say that what I have learned from my Guru Maharaj about loving Krishna comes from loving the people that are wanting to also learn how to love Krishna. And so that's how I'm wanting and praying to stay enthusiastic, that I can always somehow find someone that I can talk to and say, how are you today? How can we connect a little deeper? How can we do some things that can bring us closer to God? And it's simple. For me, it's that simple. That's the way I stay enthusiastic. Simple. And from his home, somehow by Kishore's mercy, I'm able to do this with people all over the world. So thank you so very much for being here. You're making what I would like to offer to my Guru Maharaj possible. Thank you. Yes, Guru.
Just interested to find out, what is the most interesting story that you can share from the Bible?
That is the most inspirational.
Most inspirational. Wow, there's so many. They're different. There are different kinds of experiences of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Yeah, different layers of awareness. Layers. There's one layer of awareness that I especially appreciate about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and that's when he sent me to Africa. And when we went there, this was in 1980. He said, he had a dream actually himself. And Srila Prabhupada came to him and told him to go to Africa. So he went, he left. He just left us. We were in the restaurant, and I was new. I was a bhakti, and I wasn't even initiated. And he just woke up that morning, and he came out of his room, and he said, I want to meet with the devotees. There were a few of us, maybe like 4 or 5. And he said, I had this dream about Srila Prabhupada. Actually, he wasn't sleeping in a room. He was sleeping in a closet that stored books. That's where he had his bed. And so he said, I had a dream about Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada came to me in a dream, and Srila Prabhupada showed me all these faces and told me, he was pointing to these faces. And there's a little more to that story. However, the essence of it is he was directed by Srila Prabhupada to go to Africa. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had known that he was supposed to go to Africa even before Prabhupada came to him. However, he was doing the service of the restaurant. And so when he had that dream, like in 3 days, he just like packed up his whatever he was doing and closed everything, closed whatever services, left us. And actually he sent me to New York. He sent me to New York City to live in the temple in 55th Street, New York, to distribute books. Because the books that I was distributing, the Lakshmi, the money was going to go to Africa, to help preach in Africa. And he left. He just like was gone. And I was like, how in the world could somebody do that? Because I was new. And I was like, how can he do that? He just like one day, he was so excited about doing that service of the restaurant. Like we look forward to the Sundays, and we look forward to all the people that were coming. I remember Mahanidi used to be with us. So many of these very senior devotees now, they would come to the restaurant, and it was just a beautiful service. And just like that, he said, I have to go. And I thought, how can somebody love somebody so much like that? How is that possible? How is it possible that somebody can just come and say, I want you to do something, and you just do it across the world? I thought, I want to have that kind of love. I want to have that. And I'm still learning how to get that. And I know that if I just do some of the things that I saw that he did, I know Krishna will bless me to one day have that. So that's the story. That's my story. I'm praying to get that love that I saw Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj have for Srila Prabhupada. That was a love I did not understand. I still can't say I really understand it, but I want to have it. I want to have it. That's definite. Yeah, that's a love that is so sweet. It's incredible. I mean, in 6 months, he had me going to Africa. And not only that, with a one-way ticket, and I ended up staying there 10 years. So, but you know, when I think of that kind of love, I just feel like I'm in dirty water. You know? So I pray that I really sincerely pray to my Guru Maharaj to take me out of the muddy water and let me taste a little of that love. And I'm getting a little of that. That's why you guys. Thank you. Is that okay? Okay. Sure.
Vrajalila was expressing that he wishes that he had love like that. Love that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj exemplified by packing. But then she just expressed the love she had for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj because she was new, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said, come to Africa. He didn't send her a ticket. He sent devotees to actually give her a ticket. And that was a one-way ticket. And she just packed up and moved to Africa to actually serve because Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj asked her to come. So she does have love for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Before I share something, I guess, about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I wanted to express my gratitude again for all the devotees who are here assembling. And when I was in Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's room and I heard the devotees chanting, oh, it was so sweet. I was just wondering, who are these devotees from Goloka who have descended on Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's abode to share the holy name. So thank you so much, and thank you, Vatsal Prabhu, the transcendental conductor of the holy name. It was so sweet. Om Ganati Manandesha Ganagana Shamaka Shakshu Tasmai Shri Gurudeva Panchakapatura Vishtakri Prasandhavyevacha Patitanapa Vyo Vaishnavya. So when you asked Vrajalila that question, something just came to mind about one thing that inspired us about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, one inspiring story. There are many, but the first one that came to mind was one that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj used to spend 6 months in North America. This was like in the late 80s, in the early 90s. He would spend 6 months in North America, and then 6 months he would travel mostly or primarily to Africa, West Africa. And one year, when he travels from West Africa, it would take him normally anywhere from 2 to 4 days to get to North America from Africa. He would express that you would buy a ticket, and every time he bought a ticket, the plane was overbooked. And so, and they wouldn't have assigned seats. So the way that you would get a seat on the plane is that when the plane arrived and they opened the gate, you had to run from the gate to the plane. And it wasn't like the plane was right next to the terminal. So they opened the gate. You had to make a mad dash. He said, I used to run track. So he would run with his luggage. And you'd have to bring your luggage. That's another thing. And then they would get on the plane. So sometimes he would have to sit in the airport for a few days. And whenever he traveled, he would fast. And usually it was like a nirjal fast. He wouldn't even drink water. And so on this one occasion, coming from Africa, he arrived in Washington, D.C., and I picked him up from the airport. And he had been traveling for more than a day. It was something like a little over 40 hours traveling. And we took him to the institute there. He showered, and during that time we didn't have the internet. And so people would write him regular letters by hand. And on his desk, over 6 months, he would literally have letters which covered every square inch of the desk, a desktop. And so he would shower and he said, I would like to have prasad. And then we bring him prasad. And while he was waiting, he would start opening the letters. And he would write on the letters the responses. And this time he came in, we picked him up about 8:30 in the evening. And by the time we got to the institute, it was after 10. He honored prasadam, it was after 11, and he was writing these letters. And around 2 o'clock, I said, Guru Maharaj, you've been traveling for a few days. Please, the letters have been here. Some have been here for 6 months. I said, one day is not going to matter so much. He said, no. He said, just exactly, some of these letters have been here for 6 months. And these persons have taken the time to write me. And they're waiting for a response. He said, and you never know what someone is actually going through. I said, so I'm going to respond to these letters. And so he continued. And Mangal Arti took place the next morning. He didn't come to Mangal Arti, but I heard him in his room. And then after Mangal Arti, I came up to the room. He was still responding to the letters. And somewhere around 9 o'clock, he finished with the letters, and he called the secretary over, and that's when he took rest. And sure enough, I remember one particular person who had written him and was diagnosed with, at that time, it was AIDS. He was diagnosed with AIDS. And he was waiting for a response from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And when Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj wrote him, he lived another week after he received a response from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And he was so excited by hearing that correspondence from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And prior to that, he was going through levels of depression because he thought that not only everyone in the world, because, you know, having AIDS, people tended to reject him, but this spiritual person even rejected him. But not knowing that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was traveling and never received the correspondence. But he soon received that 1 week before he departed. And he was so inspired and regained his faith before he made his transition. And so just that little particular situation just was an example of the selfless mood of compassion that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had. And even though he had gone through so much austerity to get to Washington, D.C., hadn't eaten, hadn't drank anything, he was tired, still he wouldn't rest until he responded to each and every person that actually took the time to write to him. So, thank you for asking that question.
How do you stay through?
Yes. So going back to I guess that particular point, you said something also in regards to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj giving seminars, and this was something that was he was so excited to do this, give seminars and workshops, because in this type of format, he had the opportunity to have personal contact with so many different people. He would express that he spent so much time engaging in learning secular things and topics that were important or resonated or were relative to people, because he said that if you could speak the language of someone that you're trying to communicate with, you eliminate at least one barrier. Now, of course, he didn't speak so many different languages. He spoke English, and he would say, I barely speak English. And, of course, we don't speak any other language. You know, what, one word in Russian, da.
Placebo.
Placebo. However, what he would do, if he was going into an area to address doctors, he would try to find out what's relevant to doctors, what's going on in society that is important to doctors. If he was going to speak to attorneys, he'd go and he'd find out what was relevant. If he was going to speak to a certain religious group, he'd find out, you know, what are some of the challenges that they are facing in their particular institution, and then try to reach persons in that way. He gave this one simple definition of preaching, because in our institution, I remember one of his godbrothers expressed that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is the personification of preaching. He's just a preacher through and through. And he did that all up until the time he departed from the planet. And he gave this one simple definition. And it's so simple, but yet so profound. He said, preaching is simply trying to remove the obstacles that keep one from accepting Krishna. That's it. Just trying to remove the obstacles. And Krishna does everything else. Just making ourselves a transparent biomedium and trying to at least reach someone in the heart. And that's one thing. Even though he may not be able to speak the particular language, he could always speak the language of the heart. And when we were serving him during the last year of his time on the planet, I recall when so many doctors and nurses would visit him in Mexico. One of the clinics that he was at, the head physician, he was so touched by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj that each and every day he would invite a colleague to come and see Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And he said, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I have someone that I want to check your pulse. And he would just make up some type of reason for this person, this colleague, to come in and have some interaction with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And then it never failed, the colleague would sit down and they'd engage in some discourse. And I would try to contemplate, if someone would ask a question, and I try to think, okay, he's going to answer it this way. And he'd answer it different every time. Someone would ask the same question. You know, another person would ask the same question that someone asked the previous day. And I said, oh, okay, I know the answer to this one. Wait a minute, he said something totally different yesterday. And that was because he was being a transparent biomedium. He was actually speaking to the heart of that particular person. And he spoke what that person needed to hear. And it was just miraculous. It was just so wonderful to see him in action. You know, compassion, the embodiment of compassion. And so, what we learned from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, as far as being enthusiastic, what I learned, at least from him, is that enthusiasm is actually a symptom of gratitude. It's a symptom of gratitude. If we are not grateful of a situation or grateful to someone, it's very difficult to be enthusiastic. And so, having an attitude of gratitude is essential to maintain enthusiasm. And so he used to express to us each and every day, take inventory before we take rest. And think about what service you've done that particular day in reciprocation to the Supreme Lord and reciprocation to those who have brought us closer and closer to the Supreme Lord. How have we reciprocated that day? And then consider and contemplate what could we do tomorrow that would be a reciprocation, the mood of gratitude. So we have a gratitude, and then we consider how can we reciprocate. And so for me, there are 9 different processes of devotional service, and it's important for devotees to find at least one process, which is something that gives them so much joy, gives them so much appreciation, something that they're so grateful about, and they somehow in some way want to reciprocate with the Lord, and we want to reciprocate with our spiritual master, we want to reciprocate with the devotees and engaging in that particular service. And so chanting is something that inspires me and encourages me. And then seeing how I can somehow, in some way, encourage someone else in chanting and taking the holy name to heart.
Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, when he was leaving his body, the last few days before there was a point when he couldn't speak, but he called Ekavira Prabhu and myself and he said, "You speak and he sings." Okay? So that was our instruction. And so Ekavira Prabhu sings.
He didn't exactly say that.
What did he exactly say?
He said, "You speak, Vrajalila." And then he looked at me and said, "You don't speak."
However, he did say, "You go," and at that time, Ekavira Prabhu wasn't chanting on the harmonium, he wasn't singing, because he was doing a lot of the administration. And so, but he liked to sing, he liked it, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj knew he liked it. However, he wasn't able to do it because he had him doing other things. And so what he told him, he says, "You go to Mayapur and you learn how to chant and chant for the devotees." And I can say, and Kishore can validate that, and I think Kashishwar Prabhu can validate that, Ekavira Prabhu chants so beautifully for the devotees. He actually went and did that. He went and learned how to chant and chant for the devotees. So I'm grateful he's following this instruction of the spiritual master. Hari Hari. So you guys can stretch a little, because now we're going to ask Yeshara Mai and to come and share something with all of you. So remember we talked about Africa? So after 6 years of being in Africa, I went there in 1980. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj at that time was a sannyasi. He wasn't a guru. So in 1986, he decided that he would become a guru. Now he didn't decide, actually. What happened at that time is Kirtananda was the guru of Africa, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was his sannyas disciple. And so at a point, Kirtananda Maharaj said, or Kirtananda Prabhu said, he wasn't going to go back to Africa anymore. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had to accept being a guru. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj did not want to at all. He was like, "No, I'm very happy just being a sannyasi." And Kirtananda said, "Well, I don't know who's going to initiate these people that are coming, because I am not coming back. I can't come back." His health was not allowing him to go back. So that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj requested some of the ISKCON gurus to come at that time. However, not too many people wanted to come to Africa. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had to accept becoming a guru. And so in 1986, he took that service, that responsibility of taking disciples, and Yeshara Mai was one of those, among those first disciples that came in 1986. So this is the transcendental system of how it works. And so Yeshara Mai, she was such an enthusiastic young girl. When Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj brought her from Nigeria, he actually called me and he said, "I am bringing her to you." And I was like, "No!" Because at that time I was in America, and I was like, "No, that's too much responsibility." And he said, "Yes, I am bringing her because you need to because at that time I was still collecting for Africa. I was still coming back to America and collecting." And he said, I want her to collect. I want her to distribute books. I want her to do that service. So Yeshara Mai came. And the rest is history. Yeshara Mai is like one of the most amazing devotees. She has done so much service for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Incredible service. She is one of those persons. She's one of those disciples that the guru doesn't have to tell what to do. She just, in her own creativity, she comes up with things that she's going to do. I remember the first time she decided to write a Vyasa Puja book, to create a Vyasa Puja book. And I remember just like thinking, how is she going to do this? Where is she going to get all the pictures and the letters and this and that and this and that? And she just was like a soldier. You know, she had that mood and still has that mood. Always had that mood. And she did that Vyasa Puja book, like an amazing book, Vyasa Puja book, First class.
That was the first.
That was the first.
Yeah,
And I don't think we had too many after that.
Then after that was refined. The next book was Leadership or Veda? Anyway, she started Harinam Press.
Right.
Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's press for, all of his 21 books that were done. She actually started.
And if you hear some of the tapes that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is giving classes, there's a voice back in the 90s that's introducing him. And sometimes that voice is Yashoda Mai. So she's one of those devotees that I can say is really, really very dedicated to Srila Prabhupada and to her spiritual master, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and she still keeps being innovative and creative. She's going to tell you a little bit about what keeps her enthusiastic. When she told me, I'm going back to school, this was like a few years ago, I'm like, what are you going to do going back to school? My kids are grown, I need to do something. I'm going back to school. What are you going to do in school? It's like time to die. No, I'm going back to school, and I always had this desire to further my education. She already had done some parts of her education, but she wanted to do a master's in herbology, because she's like a worker in the she's an earth person, so her hands are like in the earth and in the soil and making. So now she went back to school, did her master's, and came back out, and now she does her own line of herbs that's all over. That's Yashoda. That's how she's very empowered young lady. So Yashoda Mai.
I can't stop though, but actually.
I don't even know who that person is.
Actually, Yashoda was born in England, and she was getting into trouble, and her parents shipped her off to Nigeria. This is where her parents are from. But all of you, if you have kids, this is a reality. When they get a certain age, you're going to have to really watch and call all your aunties and uncles. So they sent her to some of her aunties and uncles in Nigeria. And of course, Krishna just got her. Krishna got her in Nigeria.
I just thought about it. Vrajalila said she's an earth person. She works with her hands. But Yashoda Mai, she's just eclectic. She does so many different things. I mean, and whatever she does is first class. We talked about Harinam Press, and she went back to school and then learned herbology. But then when we used to do some of the most amazing programs in Washington, D.C., they were highlighted by these dramas. And the producer, director, choreographer, fundraiser, MC,
Yes.
it was Yashoda Mai. She was that person.
And Bhakti, sorry.
And tough. She's like a Kshatriya Ma.
Yeah, she is.
If there is a spiritual battle, I want Yashoda on my side, because she's tough.
She's spiritually tough.
Really.
She's an amazing young lady. One last story about her. When Bhakti Tиртха, when he brought her and said that he wanted me to teach her or train her in book distribution. And so we used to do book distribution. And sometimes I would just leave her in the place where we would be. We would go to malls, or we would go to a parking lot, or we would go, different places to distribute books. And she would just go, like, keep going and keep going and keep going. And I'll be like, we can stop now. We can go back to the temple. It's okay. And she's like, no, So I remember I told my Guru Maharaj, our Guru Maharaj, I said, she's teaching me how to distribute books. I'm not teaching her. Because she has so much energy. It was just like incredible, just incredible. So Yashoda Mai, would you like to come and sit over
I don't even
here?
know, do I need to say anything more? Can I stay here? Can you shift back?
Yeah, everybody. Can you turn the camera around? Just wait a minute, she's turning. Are you sure?
Does it red folder down there? Yeah, and also the container.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bhakti. Thank
Hare
you
Krishna.
for being so generous. My mother Vраджалила asked me to say something about being infused. I was kind of thinking about it, and I was thinking, it's the person that you see now is not the person that was here like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Is that we are continuously moving and evolving and changing. And as you're in Krishna consciousness now, the one thing that stays constant is your connection with Krishna, your connection with your spiritual master, but everything else evolves. Your emotional health evolves, your depth of spirituality evolves. Bhakti Tиртха Maharaj, every time he traveled, he would say, when I come back, I'm not going to be the same person. And I don't expect to see you as the same person either. I want you to get deeper into your Krishna consciousness, get deeper into your relationships. This is what he expected from us, to be constantly moving and evolving. So I feel like that I am constantly moving and evolving. Every time I hear a tape, every time I hear a lecture from Bhakti Tиртха Maharaj, there's more of it that I understand. Every time I hear a lecture from anybody, it seems as though I'm getting more and more as I go deeper. Every year that I'm understanding something more. I was just thinking the other day about Srila Prabhupada. You know, so many things that we heard about Srila Prabhupada, that Srila Prabhupada said, like schools are slaughterhouses, and we never went to the moon, and all these different things that you hear of Srila Prabhupada said, and then you just tuck it away in the back of your head. And I remember getting such deep, just like the light would go on, you know, that Srila Prabhupada said such and such, and then one day that thought just came to my mind. I can understand how that is true. I remember when I was homeschooling my kids, and they asked me one day, you know, why are we homeschooled? Why don't we go to the public school? And I said, well, the public school doesn't have the same goals that I have for you. You know, I want you to be creative, I want you to be independent, I want you to be intelligent thinkers, I want you to ask questions, I want you to analyze. That's not what the public school is going to train you to do, you know. And then I remember what Srila Prabhupada said about the public schools are like slaughterhouses, you know, just like training sheep up to just be led. And it finally dawned on me, that's what he meant, you know. So, again, it's the same thing with Bhakti Tиртха Maharaj. So many different things that he did that I am now just understanding the significance of that. And I want to share a story. As Vраджалила was saying that I joined in Africa, and when Bhakti Tиртха was a great utilitarian. He always used everything that he could in Krishna's service. So he had been trying to get visas for African devotees to come to America to support Vраджалила and Ishvara, right? In another devotee that was an African devotee that was actually in America. Both of them collecting to send funds back to West Africa, not just Nigeria, but Ghana, Sierra Leone, for Books for Africa. Books for Africa. That's what the whole focus was. So when I joined the temple, and he found out that I had a British passport and I had a visa for America, a 5-year visa for America. And it had been so hard for him to get a visa for the African devotees to come to America. They were constantly being rejected. The American embassy wouldn't give them visas. And then he found out that I had a visa. He was like, oh, the lights went on. We can send her to America. And I remember sitting with him one day, just like having like a session with him. And he's saying, well, you've almost finished your degree, because I was going to school in Nigeria. What do you want to do? I said, well, I want to go back to Europe. I think I want to go to Germany. And he said, oh, well, my good friend Rita Maharaj is in Germany. Maybe I could write to him, and maybe he could find something for you to do there. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, Germany's great, you know. Let me go to Europe. Huh. But what about America? Would you like to go to America? And I said, no, I've already been there. I don't like it. I don't like the people. I don't want to go to America. I think I want to go to Europe. Let's see. Let's see if we can get anything back from Deborah Meter March. So, like 2 or 3 weeks later, another session. No, I don't think so. I don't think Germany's going to work out for you. I think you should go to the United States. I think, in fact, I'm going to take you to the United States. So we traveled together. We were on the same plane. I mean, it's like, and you can imagine just the new Bhakti being with your spiritual master. You know, you're one seat away from your spiritual master, and it's like, you know, it's like, how do I behave? What do I say? What do I do? You know. So anyway, we landed in New York, and we went to the temple, went to Radha Govinda's temple on Skimmerhorn Street. And this was 1986, this was January 1986. And of course, as a sannyasi, he was just like whisked away and, you know, taken away. And I was just left there. But before he left, he opened his briefcase. He had this stainless steel briefcase, aluminium, had this aluminium briefcase, opened it up, brought out a couple of yards of saffron material, gave them to me, and said, make me a bead bag, and then left. I was like, what? I don't even understand. I had this 2 yards of this shiny, bright saffron material in my hands and an instruction to make a bead bag. Okay, how does he even know I sew? I don't know anybody. This is my first time to New York Temple. I don't know anybody here. It was like, and thinking about this, so of course I had to start talking to people, and, you know, calling Matajis, you know, I'm sorry, Harry Ball, you know, I just got here, but I need to find a sewing machine, can you help me? Oh, maybe you need to talk to the Mataji that sews for the deities, okay, this is her name, go up here. You know, so I spent the whole day trying to fulfill this order, and at the end of the day, I managed to find the Mataji. She helped me figure out like how to make the form and everything. And this is probably nothing for you guys. You probably will do this in your sleep. You know, make the thing, and then I said, okay, well, let me go get some chanting beads. Let me go find the chanting beads to tie. And I ended up making 2 nice bead bags with chanting beads and everything. So by that evening, because we didn't end up staying in the temple, by that evening, I presented him back with 2 bead bags. And he looked at them, nice. Put them in his bag. That was it. Nothing else. And over the years, I've thought about that, and I've thought about a number of other things that have happened to me in Krishna consciousness, and I try to understand what was that all about. You know, did he really need the bead bags? No. So what was that instruction all about? And it finally dawned on me a few years ago. Now this is like almost 30 years ago, so it's a slow process. Okay. But in order to get that, in order to fulfill that instruction, first of all, you have to be determined to fulfill it. You can't just say, don't know anybody here, don't know how to sew. It can't be done, right? The spiritual master gives you an instruction. He also gives you the ability to be able to fulfill that instruction. So I was thinking, okay, so in order to fulfill that instruction, first of all, you had to be determined. Then you had to create relationships. You had to speak to people, as Vraджalila was saying. You have to talk to somebody, you know? So then you create those relationships, you make friends with people, okay? And then you utilize whatever is available. Utilize whatever is available. This machine, figure out how to work it. Figure out how to, you know, get the cloth that you need, get the thread that you need, all of that stuff. And do it in a timely manner. So all of these things he was teaching me. And the most important thing, the lesson that I got from all of that is that if you put your mind to it, you can do it. You know, if you are determined, if you're enthusiastic, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. Whatever it is that you want to do for Krishna, you can do it. But you have to have all of those things there. You have to be determined, you have to be enthusiastic, you have to want to do it. And Krishna will make a way for you. So with that, I found myself evolving through so many different services. When I was in Nigeria, I was a a book distributor. I tried cooking for 1 week. As after the Christmas marathon, you know how it is after the Christmas marathon, you've been doing books and you're so high and everything, and you come back to the temple, and I had an offensive mentality. It was like, what are all these people doing in the temple? They should be out doing books. You know, why? Anybody can cook, anybody can do all of this stuff. So the temple president said, okay, you want to cook, you want to do what they're doing? Okay, take a week, do what they're doing. You know, you be the cook and you serve all the devotees. That was terrible. Oh my God. You had to start immediately after Mangal Aarti to get breakfast ready, you know. So when do you get the chance to chant your rounds, you know? I'm already getting up at like 3 in the morning and then try to chant a few rounds and then Mangal Aarti, and then you go straight into the kitchen because you have to cook for the devotees because they're going out. On Sunday they have the different services. Then as soon as breakfast finished, you have to start thinking about lunch. And it's like, I was exhausted at the end of the day, and I still didn't have all my rounds finished, you know? It was like, oh my God, this is hard work. I want to be the Sankirtan devotee. I don't want to go out. So Sankirtan devotee, then I came here, and we were doing some books, but we were mostly collecting to buy books to send back to Africa. And then the institute started, and the way that we approached people, we had to become very expert in using our intelligence to bring people to Krishna. Because in Nigeria, in West Africa, when you dress like a devotee and you talk about Krishna, everybody's attracted to you. Everybody wants to know, oh, what books do you have? Oh, when's the next program? Oh, when's Harinam? Is there going to be people doing Harinam? We would do Harinam. Mother Vrajalila can talk about this. We would do Harinam. We would take boxes and boxes and boxes, hundreds and hundreds of books, put them in a place. We would put down mats on the ground in like a busy intersection or a busy area in town, like in a square in the middle of the town, and we would just start chanting. By the time we finished chanting, there'd be like 200 people gathered around, and once we finished chanting, somebody would stand up and start talking. And then after they finished preaching, we would say, okay, we have all of these books here. People would like be running after each other, pushing each other out of the way to get these books. That's how we did Harinam and Sankirtan in Nigeria. You would walk along, people would stop you. Oh, do you have signs of self-realization? I want to read this book. They would know the books by title. You'd be trying to get somewhere, they'd be stopping you. No, wait a minute. I want this book. It says in this book, blah, 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 blah. I remember coming back from the airport one time, and this man stopped me. He was a Muslim, and he stopped me and he said, oh, wait a minute. I've been reading the Bhagavad Gita, and here in this chapter, 1866, it says abandon all types of religion. So are you telling me that I have to abandon being Muslim? And we were getting into this whole big discussion about it, you know. So that's what it was like in Nigeria. But coming to America, it's a little bit different. You know, you try to stop people. Nobody wants to listen. I don't have time. You know, no. Get away from me. So we would have to figure out different ways to be able to attract these people because we knew that they needed Krishna consciousness. So as Ekavira was saying, in the institute we had all of these different programs that we created. We had Kwanzaa programs, we had plays around the Bhagavad Gita, we had plays around different things, we had different skits. We would have people coming and we would do quizzes during the Srimad Bhagavatam class. Sometimes we would have a Srimad Bhagavatam class that would be listening to Srila Prabhupada, and we would have a question at the end of it. There would be a quiz, and the person that got the most answers correct from listening to Srila Prabhupada's lecture would win a prize. So everybody would be listening very hard. So many different ways that we understood how to reach out to people, and all of this was by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's example of how he would engage in people and reaching out to people. One time, a famous quote from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj that if I had to wear a bathing suit, you know, bathing trunks, and preach in bathing trunks just to attract people, I would do that. And so many times in different situations you see him, how he would read the crowd, how he would understand what was in people's hearts and be able to touched their hearts by what he said and what he did. So, in this continuous evolution to where I am now my kids are grown, I'm no longer living in an urban situation here on the farm, and so many ways in which we find ourselves. I know that you guys are still moving and everything. At some point, you'll come to a point where, okay, I don't. When we first moved to Washington D.C., I lived in 5 different places. Every year we would move to a different house. Even when we first came to this country, we lived not even Ingraham. We were in Georgia, then we were in South Carolina, then we were in Maryland, then we were in D.C., then we were back in Maryland. So we moved all over the place. So at some point, you realize, okay, this is where I'm going to be. So I've come to that point where Gita Nagaри is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to live. Okay, so now what is your service? What are you going to be doing here? And as Ekavira was talking about, you have to find that thing that brings you the most joy, that thing that brings you, that you're most passionate about. Because that is the thing that's going to sustain your enthusiasm, sustain your creativity, stimulate your intelligence. This is what I want to do. How am I going to do this in such a way that it's going to be pleasing to my spiritual master, pleasing to Guru, pleasing to Krishna? How am I going to bring Krishna to people through this thing that I want to do? So, 2 conversations have kind of put me on the path where I am. The first conversation was with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj when he was looking for people to move to the farm. There were different properties that he was taking people to and looking about, and the house where I live now, my husband and I were looking to move to Gita Nagaри, and we heard that this devotee had this property for sale. And so Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj went with us to the house to look at it, and we walked around the house, and from my perspective, all I could see was, there's a hole in the wall. This floor is really a mess. There are no doors on any of the rooms. Is this the kitchen? I can't tell because there's nothing in here except maybe a stove. And what is this room upstairs? It's just a room with 3 holes in the ground, in the floor. Huh. Okay. That's what I saw. Okay. What did Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj see? So Gurudev is looking through the house. Oh, what potential. What potential. Look at that view. It's beautiful. Oh, look at all the space in here. Oh, you could put something there, and you could put something there. This is actually just perfect for you. And I'm thinking, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of work. But, of course, Gurudev, please your spiritual master, so we took the house, and it was a lot of work. But now, like 20 years later, I'm looking at the beautiful view, I'm looking at the potential, and I'm looking at all these things that Gurudev saw all those years ago. And today I'm thinking, okay, Gurudev saw all this potential. What am I doing with this potential? What am I doing with this? So I wanted to figure out what I'm going to do here in Gita Nagari. My kids have gone. I've got this land. I've got me. I still have a few. As the second conversation with the Mataji called Kaishori as well. She actually works for Gita Nagari Press. I don't know if you know her, Kaishori. She does all of the editing for a lot of the books that come through the BBT. And so she looked at me one day and said, what are you going to do? The kids are going to go soon. And at that time, my youngest was, I think she was 9. The kids will be gone in a few years. You'll be on your own. What are you going to do with yourself? What is it that brings you passion? What is it that you enjoy? And for the next 11 years, I was thinking, well, what do I enjoy? What do I like to do? What is it that brings me passion? And I finally decided it was the thing that I'm always doing, which was looking at plants, looking at herbs, figuring out different herbal remedies. Whenever my kids were sick, I would always figure out a herbal remedy, whether it was peppermint tea for digestion, or this, or mullein, to help clear congestion out of the lungs, or different things like that. So I said, but that's what I like doing, because I'm already doing it. How can I make this more official? So that's when I went back to school and got a master's in therapeutic herbalism. and decided that this is how I wanted to serve the devotees. And it was interesting because when I first became a devotee, I was in college in Nigeria studying microbiology as a pre-med course because I wanted to be a doctor. And then I met the devotees, and then Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj came to the university, and that was the end of that. But now, all these years later, I finally, like, full circle back to helping into the healing arts to try to help people with keep their bodies as fit as possible so they can do service. So with that, I just wanted to just share a few things of the things that I'm doing now. A few years ago, I decided to rename the property that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj inspired us to buy and called it 3-Leaf Farmden. And the 3 leaves are for the 3 herbal plants that brought me into herbalism. So I'm using that area now as a means as an outreach program to do different things to bring people to Krishna consciousness through health, wellness, through emotional healing, through expanding spiritual understanding. Kind of like what Mother Vrajalila is doing online, I'm kind of just doing it in public. So I just wanted to read this thing that during the Vyasa Puja, when Bhakti Tirtha's last Vyasa Puja, Mahavyasa Puja, he wrote this to me. This was, he emailed this to me. So he said, "Dear Yashodamaya, please accept my blessings, all glories to His confounded Acharya Srila Prabhupada. The way you are processing things will ultimately be good for you and the community. As we have been recently stressing, this should be an important year for innovations. The Mahavyasa Puja will also be a part of this. So pray deeply, think positively, and create. Show everyone your appreciation of them, while you as well as them manifest your higher possibilities. Yours in Srila Prabhupada's service with love, Bhakti Tirtha Swami." So you can see how like worn and everything this is. I look at it daily and I think, okay, what are the innovations? What are the possibilities? How can I inspire others to use their passions, to use their intelligence? In the Bhagavad Gita, it says the way that we can serve Krishna is to use our intelligence, Buddhi Yoga, in order to bring people to Krishna. So through 3-Leaf program, we've been creating, through 3-Leaf Farmden, we've been creating different programs to outreach not just here in this area, but in State College area, in Harrisburg, in different places. And so this is a newspaper cutting. I'm going to hand some things around, you just pass them around. This is talking about the first drum circle that we did in the Farmden. And this is the drum circle for this year. It's actually going to be next week. Every year we do this circle. We invite people to come and beat on drums. We have a kirtan at the end of it. Ekavira, I think you were at the first one.
Boy, do they beat on drums.
So he leads kirtan at the end of it, and we always end with kirtan. There's always prasadam, and there's always a chance for people to interact with the devotees and ask questions or whatever. So this is the same one, just we have a Veg for Life program that we encourage people to consider their diet and to consider becoming vegetarian. And we teach them how to do that and give them the support that they need. So this is a program that we do every year. We do a Veg for Life program. We did a mantra yoga concert last October. To give people a chance to, hear the holy name and again engage with the devotees, engage with the holy name. Always prasadam. Prasadam is like ISKCON's secret weapon. You should always have a chance to distribute prasadam. It doesn't matter whether you work in an office. Take cookies in, offer everything that you can, and distribute it. We're doing retreats as well. Here is there. And we do a kombucha workshop, so we teach people how to make kombucha. So all of these different things is a way to find out what is it that we can engage in. How can we engage people so that they can come closer to us and can understand a little bit more. Even if they don't understand, just interacting with devotees gives them the spiritual credit that they need, so the next time that somebody offers them a book or somebody, they hear the mantra somewhere, their heart will be a little bit more softened, so that they will be attracted to, to hear the mantra. So these are just some of the things that we're doing. And as far as the herbalism, I created a company called Trifolia Natural Products and Botanicals. I make tofu, I make body care products, botanicals, herbal medicines, and foods, different foods that are good for you, whether it's like fermented foods or whatever. And I go to the farmers market. I have 2 farmers markets that I attend. Everything is offered, so everybody gets prasadam. Whatever they buy is prasadam, whether it's the body care items or the food items, everything's offered. And this way I'm interacting with the public so that, I can continue this service of trying to reach souls and trying to bring people closer to Krishna consciousness. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm always inspired by the devotees, always humbled by this path that we're on. This path that we're on is the more that you're on it, the more incredible this path is. The beauty of it is something that you never really understand, the deep beauty of this path that we're on, and how incredible it is that Krishna has arranged this bhakti yoga path in order to reach our hearts, to bring us back, to him. So that's what I have. If you have any questions, I'm always eager to share. One of the things I remember, one more pastime. One of the things that we did when we were in DC was the bazaar. Remember the bazaar? It was like a glorified yard sale. The devotees every spring would be cleaning out, and they would have all this stuff that they wanted to get rid of. And so we had the idea, okay, let's just do a big yard sale. We'll call it a bazaar, and we'll bring so many people out. We'll raise money. People will get rid of their stuff. We'll raise money, and we'll have an opportunity to serve prasadam again, and we'll just do that. And so it was actually quite successful. We raised some money for the institute. But I remember one thing that Gurudev said, though. He said, when we were doing the newsletter, because I also helped with the newsletter, and this newsletter would go out to all of the different preaching centers in West Africa. I don't know in Russia if you got the newsletter there too, but it would go out to all of his disciples all over the place. And I remember him saying, we need to write about the bazaar and put it in the newsletter, because I want other centers, other yatras to be able to imitate what we're doing here, so that they can also find value in whatever it is that we're doing. We don't need to keep on reinventing the wheel. If they can see what we're doing here and it's successful and they can use it, we should tell them about it, and then they'll be able to utilize the ideas too. So I remember him saying that. And so in that mood, in that spirit, my abilities are available to anybody that would like to know what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, for you to be able to replicate this, wherever you are. If this is something that you feel that you'd also be interested in doing, I'm free to and open to sharing whatever it is that I have with anybody.
And you should have set up a table outside with all her products, so you can look at the things that she's doing. And she actually does all of these products from her hand and her garden. I went over her house the other day. I don't remember how long that was, but on her table there's all these little bottles, and like a chemist, just like creating. I was like, okay, she's having fun. So this is what Kishore asked about, staying enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness. That, as Ekavira Prabhu said, as Yeshoda said, and as our Guru Maharaj has taught us, use whatever skills and talents that we have, use it and serve Krishna with it and inspire others. That was his message to us.
So maintain that appreciation, Gurudev said. Be appreciative of everybody around you. and inspire them as well as you've been inspired, inspire them so everybody can achieve their full potential and their full possibilities. Everybody wanted everybody.
And everyone has a talent. Everyone has a skill. Everyone has something that it may be lying a little dormant. However, if we really connect deeper with Krishna to reveal what our talents and our skills are, Krishna will reveal them. And sometimes it takes other people to help us to bring it out. Like in my case, Kishori was the one that came to me and said, "Why don't we do these webinars?" And I'm like, "Kishori, I am not into technology. I don't do Facebook. I don't do any of that." I'm like, with the trees out here. She kept calling me and sending me messages, and she was just on me, constantly. And then I was like, okay. So one time I just surrendered. And so, now it's amazing, right? We have so many people that's asking for these webinars. So sometimes it takes somebody else to come and help us. So, it's to be open to reaching out also and asking someone, or maybe just someone else might just say, "Oh, you know what? You can do this for Krishna. You can make this for Krishna. You have this beautiful ability that I see. You can make things beautiful. Let's find ways to make beautiful things for Krishna." So this is our service. So by profession, I'm a mediator by profession, and that's my service. However, now as a mediator, I'm seeing that, like you showed up sharing how, she's always evolving. So I'm seeing as a mediator how many things can come from that. And so we're really grateful. So we travel around. We usually live out of America for 6 months out of the year. And when we're in America, we travel and we share what we have, what we've been given, remembering that it's Srila Prabhupada and our Guru Maharaj's mercy that we're able to do this. Thank you so much. Haribo? Someone is here? Who's here? Jambavati. Oh, okay. Another disciple of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So I want to check in with Kishori, because I know you said an hour and a half. So I just want to check in. And we want to welcome Jambavati. Hari Hari. Jambavati is also served Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Actually, she served him in many different ways, but one of the ways that was really important is she served him for some time as his secretary. I think all of us had the role, but I think Jambavati had that role for quite a while of being his secretary, his personal secretary. And he's also had many, his last secretary was a brahmachari. So he's had many different people that played that role. But Jambavati, she served Guru Maharaj as his personal secretary, and also she served him in arranging different programs for his books. So she was kind of like the liaison person that had his books. She created different venues where our Guru Maharaj could go and sign his books and talk about his books, and where he would meet people like Stephen Covey and all these different people that would at different times would actually write forewords or things like that for his books. So Jambavati was very instrumental in that. So Jamba, I'm just checking in with Kishori to see and Vatsala Prabhu, what is your timing like?
We can 20 more minutes.
Sorry?
20 more minutes we can.
20 more minutes? Yeah. Okay, Jamba, would you like to share something for a few minutes with the devotees?
I think these two ladies over here wanted to share something. First of all, I want to apologize.
Can you come in?
For being late, because I kept waiting for a break in the rain. And so, even though I live next door, it was kind of difficult to come without getting stuff wet. So, I'll let you.
Jambavati is an amazing cook. She makes these wonderful pastries, and they're all so sweet. And you know, she didn't want the pastries to get wet. And then also Jambavati is made of sugar up too, so she didn't want to get wet either. No, but she makes very, very nice pastries.
Actually, Lady Jamba, you could share something about what your creations and what keeps you enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness. Hey, can you come sit next to your shadow, please?
Oh, Krishna. I really came with the thought of coming to drop some stuff off and then leaving because I have
I know.
another
10 minutes.
engagement.
10 minutes. She has an engagement. 5 minutes. You can just share with us something about Guru Maharaj and also what keeps you enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness.
You all.
Yes.
You all and these programs here at IFAS. But first, Hare Krishna. I really wasn't prepared to speak so much. I just wanted to bring something for the devotees to partake of. As Vrajdalila said, everyone has a talent or something that they like to share. I don't really have so many talents. However, since I've been here in Port Royal, and not just me, but also Yashoda Mai has been able to connect with some of the local community here by being involved in some of their programs. The first project, I think series project that Yashoda Mai and I worked on was a Veg for Life concert that took place at one of the community centers here. And the idea, of course, was to introduce healthy eating, an alternative lifestyle. And even though there were not a lot of people that came, we were kind of prepared for that. We forged many relationships at that time, and we still have those connections and relationships today for other programs. I am also part of a local group. It's called Big Tree, and it's a local music and arts program. And they hold concerts, they hold picnics, and it's a fundraiser a lot of times for the local food pantry here. As you've probably noticed, Port Royal is not a very affluent area, and so there are families and individuals who are in need of sometimes just the basics, which is food. And so this particular organization, twice a year they hold 2 very important fundraising events that help the local food pantry, to help the community. So I've been a part of that, and as a matter of fact, at the very first program that we did, I was doing some prasadam, which is what I like to do. I like to share prasadam with people who don't necessarily get prasadam on a daily basis. And they wanted to know if I was going to be cooking for an upcoming program that was taking place that November, I believe it was. And I said, no, I didn't know anything about it. And they said, well, you should. So it wasn't me necessarily, but definitely the Krishna factor, you know, when we offer prasadam and serve it. So for the past, 6-7 years, I have been the sole cook for these fundraisers. And what's amazing is that even though all of our foods, you know, all of our prasadam is vegetarian, a lot of times they don't know. Seriously.
As long as it tastes good.
As long as it tastes good. And of course that tastes good factor is Krishna, right? But one pastime, I think the second time we did that, this particular fundraiser, I think that evening on the menu was sloppy joes, made of course with textured vegetable protein, right? Which is sort of like a ground beef substitute. And so Mother Rohini, who lives in the community, she was helping me, and I think Yashoda was also. Anyway, this man came to the window, to the ordering window, and he said, "My wife said she smelled chicken, and so I'm wondering if I can get some chicken." So Rohini, thinking very quickly, she says, "Oh, that's probably the sloppy joes that he's smelling. You know, we can get you sloppy joes." So he said, "Yeah, give me a couple of sloppy joes. That'll satisfy her." So a lot of times, the meat substitutes that we have, they actually think it's meat, unless we tell them, you know, that it's not. That sometimes they really don't know the difference. And of course, nowadays, some of the mock meats, as you call them, are so close to taste in terms of the real thing, people really don't, you know. Sometimes we have to be a little creative with some of the offerings that we have in the community, because not everybody knows what a pakora is, but around here, because they're sort of a country base, they know what fried fritters are, you know. So when we have like cabbage pakoras, we change the name and say it's, you know, cabbage fritters with a special tomato sauce. And I remember actually her daughter, Kalakanti, made cabbage fritters for a memorial for a guitar instructor here a few years back. He left his body, and so we were able to, you know, provide some of the food, some of the prashadam. And this one guy, I gave him the order, the cabbage fritters, and he kept coming back. He says, "Wow, this sauce." He said, "What did you put in this sauce?" And I said, "You know, I can't really tell you."
Otherwise I'd have to kill you.
Kind of a secret. Yeah, you know, I said, "I can't really tell you." And he said, "Well, I guess I'll just have to marry you then." So, definitely, you know, intermingling with local people and other events that I'm blessed to be able to vendor at is what keeps me enthused and interacting with people. And I never consider myself a preacher. This is the preacher right here. And these are the preachers right here. But the prashadam, you know, is, I guess you could say, my preaching. And so I'm always humbled and enthused to do that.
That's Srila Prabhupada's preaching.
Yes, yes. Srila Prabhupada's preaching. Exactly.
Also, Jambavati plays guitar.
I pretend to play guitar. But
Can you tell a quick pastime of Guru Maharaj?
which one?
Just a quick one.
Tell you something funny. Maharaj was very personal, you know, very, very personal. And he was always mindful of how we were presented in the community, no matter where we went, you know. Whether it be, because he always said that when we go out into the community, particularly in like non-devotee communities, it's really kind of like spiritual espionage. And so as such, you know, sometimes you have to dress the part. And so we didn't always go to these programs in devotional clothing, you know. And of course, him being in, you know, a black body, a lot of times we would go to a lot of African centered events. And of course, we would wear our African attire, you know. Or if he happened to be speaking at a church, We would dress the way we used to dress when we all went to church, in our Sunday best. So he was very expert at presenting ourselves in an appropriate way for the particular preaching venue. And he was also very mindful of how we personally dressed, He wanted us to look very pucka, of course. I remember one trip, we were on our way to Harrisburg, I believe it was. I don't know if it was our first or our second time going to Reverend Massey's church. Anyway, we stopped at one of the service areas so everyone could, take a break and go to the restroom, etc., and refresh themselves. And I remember Maharaj had gone in, he'd come out already, so I went in, people were coming out, and I remember coming out and passing by the car that he was in, and he looked and he said, he was looking down at my feet, he said, "Jambavati, lose the socks, lose the socks." And the reason he said that is because they were these neon orange socks. And I think I had just, grabbed them because it wasn't winter, but it wasn't quite warm enough to be, just totally bare feet with sandals on. So I just grabbed the first socks I saw just to put something on my feet. And they just happened to be these neon orange socks. And he saw me in those socks and said, "Lose the socks."
That reminds me, Mother Vrajalila, do you remember when we would do Sankirtan, leave for Sankirtan in Ingraham Street? And I don't know when it was, but there was this fashion. One of the fashions was that you had this lace petticoat underneath your skirt, and you let the lace part show underneath the skirt. Do you remember that? Remember that fashion? Okay. So we were wearing it, well, at least I was wearing it. I don't remember if you were wearing it, but we were wearing that and tried to leave the house. And Bhakti Tиртха Maharaj, we passed his room or something. Anyway, I don't even know, but I didn't even know where he came from. He was just suddenly there, and he saw this thing. He said, "Yashodamayi, your underskirt's showing." I said, "No, Maharaj, that's how it's supposed to be. That's the fashion." He said, "Oh, really? No." So I had to go back up and change and take the
Exactly.
I said, "No, you're not leaving the house with your under." What kind of crazy fashion is this?
Exactly. One more pastime?
Yes.
Okay. This is the one where I think I really became serious about Krishna consciousness. It was the Ratha Yatra, which was part of the Independence Day parade in Washington, D.C., and Maharaj always was part of that parade, because we were we were part of it because, we were able to bring Lord Jagannath out. Anyway, this was part of the Potomac
And millions of
temple.
this parade, it's millions of people watch this parade.
This
in
is
the
like
road
the
and
national
on television.
parade.
The president comes to this parade.
Exactly.
So that's why we're part of that.
Right, and it's like, it's the national parade, July the 4th, which is the day of our independence, right?
In District of Columbia.
In the District of Columbia, our nation's capital. So that's like a big thing, right? Anyway, at that time, I was responsible for setting up the book table, setting up the books and so on and so forth. And also literature about the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology. And the way that it was supposed to go, when he finished the parade, he comes over and sits at the table, and then people come over and they browse the books, to talk to him, ask questions, and so on and so forth. It was his, meet the public program. Anyway, for some reason, Agni Prabhu, who was responsible for distributing the books and mailing them, he would always, keep a stash, and so he was supposed to have been there with the books, of course, long before Maharaj had gotten there and set up, so I could set up the table. For some reason, I don't know if it was the traffic or what, he didn't get there. And unfortunately, by the time Maharaj was finished with the parade and he got to the table, to our site, there were no books on the table. And I think when he actually got to the table, I was away and I was coming across the mall. If you've ever been to Washington, D.C., there's this grassy mall that's between the Capitol and the reflecting pool, and that's where we would always set up after the Rath Yatra. Anyway, as I'm coming across the mall, our god sister, Parameshwar, she was coming towards me, and she had this look of complete distress on her face. And I said, oh, something's wrong. And so she approached me, and before she told me what she had to tell me, she says, I don't know why he has me tell devotees these things. And she said, Maharaj said that you're going to Gita Nagari. And at that time, coming to Gita Nagari was like a
punishment.
It was like a prison sentence, you know? And so it's like, oh God, what the, you know? So, and she said, and I'm coming to Maryland. At that time, we were living in Maryland, in Harwood. And I said, oh my gosh. And of course, my heart just sank. You know how it is when you know that you've disappointed your guru, and you just feel like, you know, the nearest hole, you just want to jump in it and just cover yourself up and not come out anymore, right? So anyway, somehow Agni finally came, we set up the book table and so on and so forth, and everything went on as usual. Later that evening, Maharaj called me into his suite, and you know, I got another dressing down, so to speak, another chastisement, but I called myself, you know, I went into what they call corporate mode, which is, you know, when you make a mistake, it's not so much that you make a mistake, but what are you going to do to not make that mistake again, right? And so I told him, you know, I had some plan. Anyway, I told him what that plan was. And then he says, well, you know, he said, it's not just that the books weren't there. He said, there are hundreds and possibly thousands of people who have been waiting for lifetimes, you know, many, 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 hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes to connect with this path or to reconnect with this path, and we had nothing to give them. So that was a very, very sobering realization, you know. It wasn't just that the books weren't there, it's that people who were ready to connect, people who were ready to, you know, get back on this path or join this path, there was nothing. And so no telling how long they may have to wait again, you know. Because how many of us came to Krishna consciousness? Why? Because of a book, you know, or something that somebody had given us, whether it was a book or the Maha Mantra on the back of a card or something, you know, and we had nothing at that time. So it was a very sobering experience, and I think that's when I really got serious in terms of what it meant to be, you know, on this path.
So we thank Vatsal Prabhu for coming again, and we thank the Sherry, the Shifra, and all the organizers of the retreat. We know you're going to have a wonderful time these next couple of days. I think Krishna somehow Agni's not, it's kind of, he's deciding whether to let it rain or not rain.
And coming to Gita Nagaри is not like a death sentence.
Actually now Jamabadi has her own house right down there in Gita Nagaри, and she's happily living in Gita Nagari. But in 1995 when we came here first, yeah, it was kind of like different, very different. Anyway, I think everybody's adjusted. And you know what's so beautiful is now Dhruva and Parijata, you know, they're so dedicated devotees. They have given their life to try to help to develop the farm. And because of that, devotees like you can come and have facilities to stay, and they can, you know, they're creating such an atmosphere that you can feel a part of a spiritual environment. And so we really thank them for doing that. I mean, we've all tried to do that in different ways. Before Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj came here, His Holiness Satsvarup Maharaj was here, and he also did so much for Srila Prabhupada in Gita Nagaри. So there's so many people that have really made sacrifices to make Gita Nagari a place where people can come, and they can experience simple living and high thinking, which was what Srila Prabhupada wanted. So all of these devotees, all of these servants of Srila Prabhupada, you know, they're continuously teaching us, whether they're here with us physically or not. They're teaching us and they're helping us to be appreciative, as Ishado was saying, of this path and appreciative of just carrying out Srila Prabhupada's desire. That's all Prabhupada, he just wanted that we would have a taste for this Krishna consciousness movement. That's all he wanted. And so we thank all those devotees, so many devotees that are really trying to make this possible. So we thank you, Kasheri. Thank you so much, Kasheri. Thank you, Prabhu, for supporting your wife. You so humbly in the background support your wife. It's such a beautiful quality. Thank you so much. You let her take the front line. Of course, that's where you get the most hits. But anyway.
They say if there is a good, healthy relationship, that means in that particular situation, women are ruled.
And another great man behind a strong woman, right?
Yes, yes. Yes. But we know that because of the two of you, both of you together. It only happens with teamships. All of us, you know, we're a team. We're all a team. But the main thing is that we're family and you're home. So please, please, just be at home. Whether it's here at the Institute House or at the farm or wherever, anywhere here around this Port Royal area. As soon as you get to the Port Royal area, you're coming home. So welcome home. Thank you guys so much.
Talking about being home, I know you guys probably have a program this evening, but we actually are doing a program at Three Leaf Fountain today, Shri Jagannath. It's game night. So it's a chance for all the devotees to come together and just play board games and just associate and, you know, and have fun with each other. Because sometimes we don't do that. We have to kind of plan to come together and just talk and, you know. So if you're welcome to come over.
Well, the nice thing is that these guys are playing all the time. So now they get a chance to have a consciousness retreat. So this is what's so different. They're coming here to raise their consciousness under the able and wonderful guidance of Vatsal Prabhu. So I'm excited because when you live out and you're not always maybe near a temple or something like that, it can get a little bit kind of hectic, I'm guessing. Little intense. I remember Dennis used to talk about that a lot from Canada. So I am just really applauding all of you that you have come here to raise your consciousness.
And we joke about Gita Nagaри being a death sentence.
Or prison.
But in all seriousness, in Srila Prabhupada's pre-65 writings, he wrote a paper entitled The Conception of Gita Nagaри. And in that writing, he's referring to ISKCON. But Gita Nagaри was named New Varshana before Gita Nagari. And when it was named New Varshana, Srila Prabhupada came here. And after he visited the farm, he changed the name from New Varshana to Gita Nagari. And so in this Gita Nagari conception, Srila Prabhupada used to speak about Gita Nagari being the hospital for the heart. And so Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj used to express this particular place as a sanctuary. It is a place for devotees to actually come and take deeper shelter of Radha Damodar, deeper shelter of the holy name, deeper shelter of the hearing and chanting process, because this is actually the hospital for the heart. And so if we actually pray to Radha Damodar and pray to those great souls who have come here and served, we can have some amazing experiences during your stay here. So we're grateful that you have come, and if there's any way that we can actually assist and, how could we say, the medication process,
Serve you.
serve you
We
in
can
some
serve
way.
you.
Please and thank you. So thank you again so much for coming.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you, Vatsala.
Thank you, Vatsala.
Thank you for coming all the way from Moscow. I was in Moscow. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. And this is going to be beautiful. I'm hoping that I could come to one of your sessions, and so I could, and that there's a translator for me.
And yes, I'm looking forward to this. Very excited about this. Looking forward. Prabhu, is there anything you would like to share with the devotees?
I will share 7 o'clock.
At 7, that's the class. Okay. So then would you kindly distribute the prasad to the